I want to tell you a story today that um, only two people know this, and one of them is no longer with us. He's up in heaven singing in a choir up there, and that's Charlie Johnson. I traveled with Charlie numerous times, and he's a great friend, and a better man could never be than what Charlie was. And this particular trip, it was district conference, and it was one of the earlier times that I was in Cuba. So my first trip was 2007. Charlie's first trip was 2008, so it had to be the 2009 range. Pastor Jose was still the district superintendent in Hogan Norte, and he would always have interesting events for the district conference. In the district conference this year, he held at El Pastor Church in Baganos. And because they had a lot of room on the side of the house, he built a stage on the side of the house, and that's where they had the district conference. And for the evening event, they went over to the amphitheater in Baganos, and he held it there. So it was Charlie and I, and we had it there, and it was really interesting. Of course, when you get Jose involved in things, it was always interesting. But we were talking to the pastors and having a good time with them. And there's another church in Baganos, it's Juan Wesley. And the Juan Wesley pastor was a good friend of Pastor Alex at Baganos, or at Alcacal. I'll get this right yet. At Acala. And we had just helped them, and we were helping them build a new church there. So it was 2 years after I went the first time, and we were helping them build a new church in Acala. And Pastor Alex was telling Pastor Bo at that time, who was at Juan Wesley, about it. So Alex and Pastor Bo was talking to us and desperately wanted us to come and see his church at Juan Wesley, which was in walking distance, so it was not hard to do. It was on the, as you can say, it was on the other side of the tracks, and that side of the tracks was sugarcane, and that's where the sugarcane workers were at. And you can see the difference in the housing. You can see the difference of you cross the railroad tracks, and there was sugarcane machinery there, and it was different over there. Well, Pastor Bo showed us his church. Was in the back. It was in the shed type area. Again, very modest, and but very typical for what we were seeing in Cuba. But he showed us his dream, and the dream was building, and Cubans all have dreams. He was building a church in the front, and the building permit was about to run out, within months of running out. And in Cuba, to have a building permit is a huge advantage, because it can take years to get a building permit. I've heard stories of 10 to 12 years to get a building permit. He had a building permit, but with a permit you have to show construction each year to be able to show progress. His building permit and his progress since he had it was 2 corners of a prospective building with dug a hole with re-rods sticking in it. No concrete, just 2 holes with re-rod. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And he says, I'm going to lose my permit in a few months. I got to have some help. He didn't have a sister church. He needed a sister church. He needed all this help. And Charlie and I looked at each other, and we each pulled out $50. Charlie pulled out $50, and I pulled out $50. And we gave it to Pastor Bo at that time. And we said, okay, here is $100. Do what you can with $100 and show progress. And we'll go back to the United States. I'll go back to the United States and do my best to get you a sister church and get you more money so when I come back again. Not having any idea how to get him, where to get a sister church and whatnot. But the Juan Wesley Church started with $50 from Charlie Johnson and $50 from Dan. Now the rest of the story. We went back to the United States, and I started making calls around to churches that showed Cuba support and wanted a sister church and whatnot. And I got a hold of Denise and Miguel Fernandez. And they had just lost the sister church because it had been moved into another district. So I asked them if they wanted to take this church. I explained it to them, and immediately they said, yes, not a problem. Yes, we'll take that church as a sister church. We also made some calls to, we found out that there was an Unventine in Cuba. We found out it was from Louisiana. And I met the leader of I never met him, I talked to him on the phone. And I said, let me know after you get done with the trip how it goes for you and tell me about your trip. Well, Jerry Johnson at that time, and he has passed away in Louisiana, called me after the trip, almost crying, what a tremendous experience that he'd had. And he wanted to do something. And I found out at a later date, Jerry had cancer. And he wanted to do something for Cuba. Well, in a few months, I found out that Jerry had passed away, and he left $10,000 to be used in a Cuban church somehow, and it was at my discretion. Charlie and I talked. I called Grace Cape Coral, and we designated that $10,000 to go to the Juan Wesley Church. So the next time I went down to Cuba, I took this $10,000. And in those few months, I say I didn't do that. God showed a direction, and God led us to somebody that would take care of this. And within a year, Juan Wesley showed progress. Got a sister church, a very good church within the district. Received a $10,000 donation to really do some building. And now it is one of the biggest, the most progressive churches in the Hoagie Norte district. These are the things that nobody knows. And unless I tell somebody, no one would ever know this. Charlie knows, and Dan knows. And Charlie and I will be talking about that someday when we're sitting up there in heaven and laughing. But when I go back to Juan Wesley, and I look at the standing in front of it, it would be on the left-hand corner. There was a hole in the ground with 2 rerods. That's all there was. And now, this is a beautiful church. They come from nowhere. That's the rest of the story. And I love telling that story also. God bless until we meet again. And God bless, and I love you. Bye.